So I've pinned on my first few pieces, so I'm going to get cutting now. So I'll just start at the easiest point. Now all of these pattern pieces have the seam allowance included on them, which most patterns that you're going to come across nowadays will have. So you just have to cut on the edge of the fabric. Remember that you're not cutting on that fold because you want it to open up into one big pattern piece. And I just try to use nice, long, even strokes. The good thing about doing this round a table like this is that you can come in at any angle. Or you could lay it out on the floor, but kind of give you a bit of a bad back doing that. Depends what table you've got. There we go. Now if I've got any little scraps of fabric like this, I just keep them because they're useful to sort of test your stitches and test that your machine's threaded up right. It's always good to have a little scrap of fabric before you go on to sewing the garment itself. There we go, so that's my first piece cut out. I'll move on to the bodices now. If I get a curve that's a bit awkward, you can just go like this. And then once it's cut out and you'll be able to manoeuvre around, you can then cut into that curve a bit more easily. Same with that armhole there, I just cut straight across there in a rough manner. Try and use as long a stroke of the scissor as you can, and always rest the bottom blade there on the table to give you stability. My hands are tiny, so I can only get the scissors open that far. I'm jealous of those people that you see when you're watching on the videos. They've got those gorgeous big tailor's shears and they're zipping through. I haven't got the right hands for that. I'm like a little mouse. There we go. So I've cut that piece out and just snip across there to get rid of those bits. So I've cut that piece out, and now that I've cut it out, I can swivel it round, meaning that I can get into these cheeky curves, these armhole curves. And sometimes when I'm doing a curve, I'll just pick up and fold back so that I can get in. Smaller snips around the tighter curves. There we have it. Now once you've cut out your pattern pieces, you're going to want to make snips in for the notches. So I'll just demonstrate that on these two that I've cut out already. And you'll see around the edge of your pattern piece, you've got these little lines. And these are called notches, and they're there to help you match up your pattern pieces. They're like markers. So you just snip into the fabric the tiniest amount, just 1/2 centimetre, no more than 1/2 centimetre. And you just snip wherever you see one of those notches. Now the other marking that you're going to need to transfer are these little circular dots that are on your pattern pieces, and they're to mark out things like, for example, where your pocket is going to start and finish. Now I know that I cut out a size 3, so I go 1, 2, 3, and there's my circle with a number 3 by it, and I just pop a pin through there. That's how I do it. And then same here, 1, 2, 3, and pop a pin through that. And then I take out all the other pins from around the edge of my pattern piece. So I've already cut my notches. And then I just want to mark those. So if I open that up, where that pin has gone through, I can now make a little chalk dot on either side, on the wrong side of the fabric. Hopefully you can see that okay. So I put my pin through the number 3 right straight through to the bottom. I've kept it straight going down. Now just pull that apart, and where the pin pierces the fabric, I'll put a chalk dot. And that's going to help me later on when I'm constructing my top. I'm going to know where to put the pockets. Now typically the pattern doesn't call for pockets on the top, but I am going to add mine simply so that I can show you how to do them, because I'm going to try and cover all elements of the make in this sew along. So there's my back skirt. So I'll put that in a little pile, start to create a pile of all my cut out pieces. Now I've got my back bodice, and this is tricky because I've cut it with the wrong side of the pattern facing up. I just need to kind of look carefully and see where are those notches. Now if you're going to do this beforehand, you could grab a pen and just, you know, look and transfer. I'm just going to peel it back. Now I know that there are 2 notches there. On the armhole, you'll always find 2 notches on the back and 1 notch on the front, and the same on the sleeve. 2 notches on the back of the sleeve and 1 on the front. And that's just to help you stop you from getting your sleeve in the wrong way round. So always 2 on the back, 1 on the front. I think that's all of the notches there are actually on that pattern piece. Oh no, there is one at the neckline up there. That's to help you match up the neckline facing. I'll trim that. Should be one on the shoulder. There's normally one at the centre of the shoulder for you to match up the shoulder. And these are just serving to help you match up your different pattern pieces. So 2 on the armhole, 1 on the shoulder, 1 on the neckline. And I can now unpin that. Once I've cut out my pattern pieces, I always do like to unpin straight away so that the pins aren't left in the cloth for too long, which they could lead to making pin marks. So there we go. Do you remember what I said before about cutting on the fold? If I open that up now, ta-da, that's the back of my dress. And it's got this lovely curved seam here, which gives you a really beautiful style. There we are, so I'll fold that up. Pop that out of the way. And I shall just continue now to cut out all the other pieces. Okay, so that's all cut out. I need to go round and cut my notches. So I've got 1 at my neckline, 1 on my shoulder. Yep. I've got 1 on my armhole, and then there's none down here. I've got 2 here, which are to mark the top and the bottom of the bust, of the bust dart. So I'm going to do a little snip here and a little snip there. And then I've just transferred that dot from the apex of the bust, the point of the bust. So I'm going to do the same thing again, put a pin through there, and then I'll take off the pins from around the edge. And then what I want to do is where that pin goes in, I can actually pull that pattern piece away there, and I can show you. So you've got all those points there showing you the apex of your bust dart. So this is the beginning of your bust dart here, and you have to make sure that you cut the correct one. And this is where highlighting your pattern before you cut it out can help. Now I know that a size 3 has this unbroken line, so I just trim my dart at the unbroken line, and that finishes at the edge here. If you're making a size 2, you'd be cutting into that line. If you're making a size 4, that one, and so on and so forth, because the position of the bust dart changes slightly according to the size that you make. You've then got these dots here, and these are where your dart is going to finish. They go from 1 to 10. So I just put my pin through the dot, which is number 3, which corresponds to the size that I'm making. So here's my pin, and I'm just going to open that up, and I'm going to put a dot at the beginning and end. And later on, I'm actually going to draw lines from those dots to the notches that I've cut. So I'm going to draw like a triangle, and then when we sew that out, we'll have a nice line to follow. And that's my front bodice cut out. So I've now got my front and back bodice and my back skirt all cut out. Now, if you remember, I said that the skirt parts of the top of the dress are the same back and front. And the back, if you're making the dress, it's exactly the same pattern piece. If you're making the top, then you're going to cut this curved hem for the back of the top, a little kind of nice feature there, and you're going to cut a straight hem at the front. So what I need to do now is, before I cut out my front skirt, 'cause I've already cut out my back, I need to take my paper scissors, otherwise known as the kitchen scissors, which I quickly whipped out of the sink and gave them a dry, and I'm just going to cut along the solid line that corresponds to the size I'm making. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully cut it in one piece so that I can retain this little piece here. And again, if I'm making this again, I just stick that back on. Or if I'm making the dress again, I just stick it all back on. And if you like tracing things, you can get some tracing paper or some pattern paper, and you can trace all of this out. But I personally hate tracing. So I always end up hacking my patterns up and then sticking them back together. As long as you don't lose all these bits, you're fine. If you want to make more than one size, you're making them for friends, then obviously I would suggest tracing it. But yeah, if you're just doing different styles, then you kind of cut and stick it back together. So that's my front skirt now ready to go. So just as before, the front skirt is placed on the fold, and I just pin around the edge there and cut it. Mark the notches and mark the pocket positions. And then lastly, I will get my sleeve. My sleeve pattern will sit down here, and I shall make sure that that grain line is parallel, so I'll measure that first. And then, because I'm going to show you how to do a pocket, you wouldn't normally do a pocket on the top, but it does fit. I can see that it will fit there. So I'm going to just use that spare bit of fabric that I have at the side there, and I'm going to cut out my pockets. And with the pockets, you're going to cut out 2 pairs, because you've got a pocket on either side. So I'm just going to flip that pattern piece over and use that spare bit of fabric to make my pockets there. Now the last piece of cutting out is the interfacing. And interfacing is a stabilising piece of facing that you add to your neckline to keep it nice and true and give you a nice shape on your neckline that won't stretch out of place. So you'll notice it has a gluey rough side, because if this is fusible interfacing, meaning that you iron it onto your fabric, and then it's got a smooth side. So just fold it with the rough side on the inside, fold it in half like that, and then again just place on fold, and then I'm going to cut round the edge. And I'm just going to I've put my cutting mat down, so I'm just going to use my rotary cutter to do this. I can put in a couple of pins just to hold it in place so it doesn't wiggle around. Or you can use pattern weights if you've got nice pattern weights. You can get some very pretty pattern weights if you're looking at choosing out Christmas gifts. Or you can make your own. I'm just going to pop a couple of pins in there. And a couple of pins in there as well. And then just to show you a bit of rotary cutting. You can do this using scissors exactly the same, but I just thought I'd mix it up a bit. Be careful that you never cut with your hand in front of the blade, because it can easily slip. Again, I'll come like that, and then I'll go back into that curve in a minute. Nice firm press, and I'm just following the edges there. I'll end up with a bit of spare interfacing that you can have a play around and practice with. Oops, let's just not cut that bit there. There we go. Now that's free, I can just come in here. There we go. That's my back neckline interfacing cut out. And then I'm going to cut out my front. So if you can hear lots of noise in the background, this is because we're having the garage converted. And I'm trying to do all these videos quickly before the drilling starts. They're not making too much noise at the moment. And this is also why my cat is currently not present. Normally she comes and investigates when I'm doing these videos, but she's scared and she's hiding in the bed upstairs. There's a lot of noise going on and a lot of people that she doesn't know. There you go. And you can cut your little notches as well. You've got a notch there and a notch there that you can just trim into, and a notch on the shoulder, and that will help you match your interfacings up with your fabric facing. I nearly forgot, you're going to need to cut your pocket interfacing strip as well. So you can either pin and cut around the edge of that. I've got a little cheat of how to do this, which is that I've got this ruler and I can see that this interfacing is 2 centimetres wide by 22 centimetres long. So in fact, if I hold that up there, I can see that, as chance would have it, it's the same width. So do you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this ruler. I'm not going to worry about the pattern piece. And I'm just going to cut a couple of 2 centimetre strips. A bit quicker than using, my blade needs replacing. A bit quicker than using the pattern piece. And that's folded in half to trim it there. There you go. That's fine. These are just 2, you need to cut 4 actually. So these are just strips that go on the back and front of your skirt to stabilise the area where the pocket opening is. This is what I love about Tilly and the Buttons patterns, is they're so thorough. Not all patterns would bother with telling you to do this, but this is the joy of a Tilly and the Buttons pattern. They have everything. There you go. So that's a quick way of creating those strips. And you can buy interfacing in a strip, like a tape. But we'll just use that. So look, that happens to be just right there. And I've now got my 4 strips of interfacing for my pockets as well. There we go. And that's everything cut out. So I thought I'd lay it out like this to make a quick checklist for you. So let's work our way through these pattern pieces. So first of all, over here, we've got our sleeve, and you should have a pair of those. So move that pattern piece out of the way. So you should have a pair of sleeves, 1 and 2. Then you're going to have your back bodice piece. There you go, so that folds out like so. Then if you're doing the frilly sleeve, you're going to have your frill at the bottom. I'm not doing the frilly sleeve, so I don't have that piece. Then you're going to have your skirt front and your skirt back, whether you're doing the dress or the top. So there's my back with the, dip 10. And there's my front with the straight hem. Then moving over this way, you're going to have your back neckline facing, including your interfacing piece, which folds out like so, and your neckline facing in fabric. Got your front neckline facing, including your fabric and your fusible interfacing. You've then got 4 strips of interfacing for your pockets, each of those being 2 centimetres wide. You've got 4 pocket bags, so 2 pairs, so those will make your 2 pockets. There we go, like that. Look kind of like longs. And then last but not least, your front bodice, which will open out like so. And those are all of your pattern pieces that you need. On top of that, you need your basic sewing kit, your ironing board set up, and your sewing machine threaded up in a coordinating colour. If you're using an overlocker, you'll need to get that threaded up as well. Otherwise, don't worry, because we can use a zigzag stitch to finish off the internal seams to stop them from fraying. Any scraps of fabric, I just bundle up. I use a bit of the selvage to just tie them up into a little bundle to keep them together, and I keep those close by my side just for testing stitches and what have you. So that brings us to the end of cutting out. Next we're going to just iron those interfacings onto the neckline facings, and then we shall get on with sewing our dress.